Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley, and every week we try to bring you a story that we hope will inspire you in the realm of service. Our focus in our club is a three-part one. We're interested in innovation, education, and entrepreneurship, and it's our goal to explore how technology can serve the business of service. And so with regard to how we're doing that today, we have a program built around a long-standing Rotary program, the vocational training team program. And so I'm going to hand that over in just a minute to our team so that they can begin telling you about it. But first, I want to introduce a couple of our members on the call. And so I'm going to ask Roger and Chris to introduce themselves ever so quickly. Roger, why don't you start? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm Roger Plested, and I'm from Kamloops, British Columbia. And Kamloops is in the interior of British Columbia and about 4 hours from Vancouver. I can tell you that this last week we finally had clear skies because the BC wildfires are now concluded. Thank goodness.
Excellent, excellent. And good news there, Roger. We're glad that you weathered that storm as well as you did, and our thoughts are with everybody up there. Chris, you are up next.
I'm Chris Cochran. I'm the PR chair for this particular club. I live in Canada, Eastern Canada, from Toronto, currently in Brockville, Ontario, which is about 45 minutes outside my nation's capital, Ottawa, Ontario.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Now, you are going to meet our team, and we're going to start with the team member who's actually a part of our club. And she will introduce the program that they are all a part of. We'll get to hear from Susan and Megan, and then we will launch into a panel discussion of the coolness that is to be shared. So, Cecilia, get us going, if you would.
Okay, well, as Rushton mentioned, this project came about in the form of a vocational training team, which is a type of Rotary grant that has been in existence for about 7 years now. And in 2013, I visited the training centers for where the Shin Educational Foundation trains English teachers to both speak English better and to teach English better. These teachers are in the far rural areas of China, and they don't have access to all of the resources that are available in the cities. So the Shin Foundation decided to start sending a team of, yay, there's Brandy, a team of several teachers and a team leader, the team leader being the Rotarian and being me, each year to China. And we spend 2 weeks there. We work with rural English teachers on just those things that I mentioned, and we have a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, 2 weeks. There's like only the weekend in between is the time off because we run from morning until night. So I think without further ado, I'll let you open it up to our team members, one of whom just arrived. Hello, Brandy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can hear you just fine. So, Brandy, watch as we kick into gear with the rest of the team. Megan, why don't you start us off? Tell us about your background and how you joined in with this team.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm from Overland Park, Kansas, and I am a third grade teacher. And I've been teaching at an ESL school for the last 5 years, and then I'm ESL certified with that. So I heard from the program I graduated with my master's in December and went through, I guess, Emporia State, and then went through a guy named Ben Lau who connected me with the program with Gigi and everybody. So we were able to make that connection there, and then I was able to attend the VTT team in China and had a great time over there teaching their teachers. So.
Perfect. Thank you. And Susan, why don't you go next?
Well, hi, my name's Susan Blumenthal, and I started teaching English as a second language in 1986 in Japan, and I have been doing it ever since, just about anywhere and everywhere you can imagine. Most recently, I've been at the College of Marin here in Northern California, where I worked with Sarah Ozer, who was part of this program in the past, and she's the one who connected me to it. And I was really excited. This is something I've always wanted to do, is train teachers kind of out in the field, and it was certainly a very rewarding experience. Thank you.
Rushton?
I was muted. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. So, Brandy, if we could have you unmute, we'll have you do your introduction next.
Okay, great. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So my name's Brandy, and I've been an ESL teacher this is my 5th year, and I teach at a small private university in Central Illinois called Millikan University. And yeah, this is my 5th year there. I've been teaching a variety of ESL classes, and I've had students from all over the world. And it's been a dream of mine to go to China, and I haven't made it there until this summer. So I was really, really thrilled to be a part of this program. It was a huge honor. So thank you very much.
Wonderful to have you. All right, and let's switch to Tammy. Tammy, if you would do your introduction.
Hi, my name's Tammy. I'm just participated for the 3rd year in a row on this project, and I'm currently a director at an English school, but I'd previously been teaching ESL programs for adults, and I'd lived in Japan for 3 years.
All right. Well, we've got a lot of overlap on the teaching English in Japan front. I was a student in Japan in fall of 1987 and went back on the Japan Exchange Teaching Program in 1989, and loved it. Can't get enough of Japan. Now, what we all have at this point is kind of a sense of, here is this team of people interested in languages, development of languages, possibilities in China. And so we're gonna jump into why this team went there. So Cecilia, could you kind of capture again the idea of what's going on in China that we would have a team going at all? Why would Rotary be interested in sending a team there to do anything?
Well, Rotary actually does a lot of things in China right now, but when in 2004 the Chinese government said, voila, every student from grade 3 through secondary school will learn English and pass an annual proficiency exam, which is great, except that there were no English teachers, at least not anywhere other than the largest cities. So, but when the Chinese government says you'll do something, you do it. So the cities, of course, teachered up right away and started teaching English to their students. But the rural schools were left behind because it takes the government a long time to get their new initiatives funded in the rural areas. And the school system is very decentralized. So in provinces where there's a lot of money, those programs got started right away. In the other provinces where there isn't a lot of money, they didn't get started at all. The Shin Foundation had been working in rural schools since 1997 and has 350 schools that they've adopted over the years. And initially their work was primarily infrastructure, but now they are doing more soft efforts such as English teacher training, art teacher training, principals training, because if the principals don't understand what we're doing with their teachers, then they aren't going to support it. And they're wanting to start a science teacher training program. Believe it or not, the rural schools do not teach science, which is unbelievable to me anyway. But that's how it is that we are there, because I've been closely associated. I have many friends in the Shin Foundation, and being the grants chair, they tapped me to go see if we could make this into a viable project. You unmute.
Man, all right. So let's start this with a question from Roger or Chris that is one geared to anyone on the team.
Okay.
Chris, go ahead.
Okay, I am not a teacher. As you know, I'm in the film business. I will be in China in early 2018, by the way, on a project for the Chinese government. That aside, I'm wondering, how do you communicate with someone who speaks only a dialect of Chinese? How do you start communicating a language? I'm not a teacher, so like, how do you make that connection? So I speak. Hypothetical case, I speak only Chinese. Hey, give me a dialect. Doesn't matter.
I'll
All of a sudden,
push that question towards Tammy as the
Tammy.
veteran
Okay.
as the veteran participant on the team. If you'd like to address that.
So it boggles my mind. How do you teach someone a language who doesn't speak the language you're trying to teach?
Well,
Are you fluent in their dialect? But let's assume you're not fluent in their dialect. How do you start?
very slowly.
Okay.
I mean, for the children, they're starting them young, so they tend to pick up quickly. You teach by using gestures, by showing pictures, by getting them to repeat. They're very intuitive. When you're teaching adults, you have to use different approaches. And in some cases, our teachers that we were training didn't speak a lot of English. In that case, you use scaffolding. You have students who speak a little more English, and they help the ones that speak less, and that's how it goes. It takes years.
Thank you. I really wondered about that.
Well, and I can say that having attended the program, with the exception of a couple of years, but since 2013, there were teacher trainees in our class this year that had started in 2013, and they are now really quite fluent.
Perfect. Susan, Megan, or Brandy, anything you want to add to that question?
One thing I'll add too is one thing that we did is kind of had a questionnaire at the beginning, and just had different questions to see the different levels of the teachers that we were going to be teaching. So we were able to split them into two groups of teachers that spoke, higher English, and teachers that spoke lower English. So we were able to differentiate between the two groups, and two of us each, to the higher group and two of us to the lower group, and be able to accommodate what they need, and differentiate that way, and kind of have the same lesson and lesson idea, lesson plan, but just change it according to their needs.
Very nice. Roger, would you like to kick in with a question?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to make a few comments. 35 years ago, I knew of a group of 7 retired teachers that had been hired by the Chinese government to teach in China, and particularly English. And they did that for about 7 or 8 years. About 25 years ago, our college here started marketing to China in order for them to send students to our college in order to teach them English. And they would come for a year and take courses in terms of from the professors, and with the purpose of them being indoctrinated and within the year learning English. The third thing I would like to say is that about 15 years ago at our college university here, what we started was a course which would teach Canadians to teach English as a second language. And at present, I know 2 young adults who are in China who've completed that course of teaching English as the second language. My understanding in terms of what's happened in China is that in most of the major centers at this point of time, their English ability is fairly substantial. But where you get into the extreme rural areas and remote areas of China, it is very, there's a real dumbing down the difference between the cities and the rural areas. particularly in things like reading, math, and science. As Cecilia was mentioning, they don't teach in these rural areas science. But the question that I have from you is that would you agree in regards to the educational differences between the cities in China and the larger areas and the remote areas in China in terms of the standard of education?
Okay, who on the team would like to kick in for that?
Well, I'd be happy to address that. That is precisely the problem and exactly what the Shin Foundation is addressing in all of their programs. They have this English teacher training program has been developed over a number of years, and among other things, where we do our work in the morning, which is more like teaching the Western methods, then in the afternoon, those teachers have 4 hours of training by Chinese university teachers. And they all complain that that 4 hours is pretty boring because it's very much learning everything by rote. So we give them a little culture, we give them American teaching methods, and we think we're working now on how do we measure whether we're making a difference or not. But I just empirically, I think Tammy, you probably would agree that over the course of several years, many of the teacher trainees have really improved their skills and are sharing. Shin also is creating a platform where all of their rural teachers will have access to everything. It'll be on video, audio, and so forth.
Well, and to talking to teachers that were from the rural and some teachers that were city teachers, just hearing the different issues that they had in their classrooms were interesting. You know, some of the teachers in the rural would live with their students throughout the week and go home on the weekend, and didn't have as many resources and materials as those that lived in the city may have had.
I also wanted to interject. I think you can't overstate this notion that the language ability of people in the city is so great. It is certainly better than those that in the rural areas, but spend a week in China and you will have a difficult time in many places being understood or understanding. And I think Cecilia hit on that because they really do a lot of rote education there, which just unfortunately, when it comes to language in particular, it doesn't work so well. So I think what we're doing, or what we did, and what Shin is trying to do in bringing these more communicative teaching methods to the rural areas would do well in the cities as well. So
that's true, and one of the primary reasons for sending the team over there every year is they want their teachers to learn English or to hear English spoken by native speakers. That's a key part of their thing, because we've all seen, I believe, that the sort of beginning speakers, the ones in the lower level group, were often not understandable, but they could write and their grammar was excellent. So I think in that regard, Shin is achieving its goal by putting their teachers through this program.
Excellent. So for all of our members, and I'm sure many of our guests who are watching this as the program component of a weekly meeting coming up, one of the things to understand is Rotary has a variety of programs designed to help people in all sorts of settings. And the idea in vocational training often is to get people of a lot of different backgrounds together to encounter another part of the world, to get a chance to really communicate, kind of a sense of service as a part of this as well. And so my next question for the group, and Brandy, we'll start with you, is on a personal level, the idea of going across to this very different place, working with a group of people in a very different setting, not merely China, but rural China. To what extent did that strike you in terms of your service experience?
Well, I would say that, I've wanted to take a trip like this for a very long time, and give something back to the sort of ESL world. And so I think this was a great opportunity for me as a, fairly new teacher. I've only been in the field for, 5 years or so. It was a great experience for me to be able to kind of give something back in a volunteer capacity that was also really meaningful to me and to my, to my career track. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was excellent. And I really, really appreciated all the trainees. I was just really impressed by how focused and dedicated they were. And they were just so eager to learn and so happy to be there. You could see that every day when we walked in the classroom. So it was a wonderful experience. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I hope I answered your question. I'm not sure if I did, but I hope I did.
So. I think one of the things it emphasizes is that there is service to those whom you're helping. Like these teachers who are getting this extra, this extra practice with native speakers of English. But there's service to you and those that you work with here, right? So your experiences come back, and those that you teach and you help get a chance to learn about a very different part of the world as a function of this program. Same question about the service experience to Susan. How about you? What kinds of pieces of the trip kind of really struck you in terms of the service aspects?
I would say I would agree with everything that Brandy said. And I always, people have asked me about the trip since I've gone and ask about the service piece. And the thing I like to remind people is we're no more experts than they are. They're English teachers as well. So we were there to impart the knowledge that we have from our country. And I think that for me was the greatest service, was being an ambassador from the United States to China, or, a Western country, if you will. That's what really struck me, and always does when I'm in that part of the world, that we walk as ambassadors. And
willingness to connect. Very cool. Megan,
Yes.
how about you?
My biggest thing was, being an elementary third grade teacher, was just the, seeing the everyday things that we do in classroom here, and just sharing that with them, and then being so excited to learn a game as simple as telephone. And just getting up and moving around the room to them was, just such an eye-opener. And to think that something so small that I do, every day in my classroom, and that I can share that with them, and it's a huge thing to them, really made me feel like I was servicing them well, and really helping them get some ideas, and, really open that toolbox for them and fill up their toolbox with different activities and ideas that they can use in their classroom. Wonderful.
Tammy, why don't you give an answer to that as well? And then Roger, I'll pass it over to you for a quick question before we finish up. So Tammy, go ahead and add your 2 cents on this.
Sure. One of the biggest things for me is just the culture. China is so different, and that affects the classroom, of course, too. So, the first time I went there, it's chaotic. It smells different. It's just so different. It's hot in the classroom. And I just really had a lot of respect for the teachers, how they handle really challenging conditions. It really speaks to how hard they're working. But, coming back a second time, a third time, I'm just so much more relaxed each time I go. And when I'm interacting with my Chinese students now, I think about them differently, and I kind of see what our life must look like to them. It's just so different. Even the students that are coming from, wealthy cities, they still have this kind of chaos, this totally different world perspective. So it's changed me so much doing this project. Yeah.
Cool. I love that that's something that you see and you can share. So we've got probably 2 minutes for both a question and an answer. So Roger, what you got?
China, the people from China who immigrate to other countries tend to be extremely successful. And the question that I have, Cecilia may know, youth exchange, student exchange. Do we have that many student exchanges with China? And the other question that I have is that from each of your areas, because you're from different parts of the United States, do you get a lot of Chinese students coming into your area to go to your colleges and your universities?
Okay, so I'll answer quickly so the others have time. If there are exchange students from China, there are very few because there are very few Rotary clubs. Chinese nationals are not allowed to belong to Rotary clubs, and so therefore I don't know what penetration we have in the school environment other than through our work with Shin.
Great. And for the second question, Susan, Megan, Brandy, Tammy, anybody want to kick in?
I can chime in.
Please do.
Chime in. So I'm, like I said, I work at a private university, and we're about an hour from the University of Illinois, if you're familiar with it, in Champaign-Urbana. And I can tell you, at least at the college level, there's a huge number of Chinese students. I think last year, just the freshman class, they had 600 Chinese students. So yeah, a lot of Chinese students coming in to Illinois, specifically to that school, and schools in Chicago as well. A lot of, engineering programs, STEM fields, they're coming in for those kinds of programs. So I can only speak to the college level. I'm not sure about other levels, but yeah.
I'll say the district that I'm in, we just opened our very first Chinese school. They're trying to figure out how to say it, but they brought immersion, a Chinese immersion school. So we are getting a lot more Chinese students and families wanting their kids to speak Chinese. So they are testing that out this year to kind of see how that goes, with one class being Chinese immersion and one class just being a regular English class.
And I'm, of course, in Northern California, and yes, there are lots of Chinese students in every program around Northern California. I'm guessing Tammy would say the same in Oregon?
Exactly the same in Oregon. They're a huge percentage of English language learners.
I like the thought Megan shared, essentially, that you have these families that are Chinese American, right? And through whatever processes, the kids end up being native English speakers, and that desire to connect with the culture is something powerful. I'll quickly finish up our recording and then hand it over to Cecilia for the last thought. Get ready. It's coming up in about 60 seconds or so, ish. But all of you who are joining us this week, thank you very much for doing so. We hope that you will leave a comment at the bottom. Our Discuss the ISQUS section is a place where people get a chance to leave thoughts and tell kind of what's been going on. And it's one of the ways that we in an online club follow each other's progress through life and service and such. And everybody, please do the attendance form. Make sure to fill that out and spell your email address well as well. If you are a visitor and having successfully spelled your email address right, you'll get an email that you can share with your club secretary to make up for a missed meeting if you are in need of doing so. So with that, let me hand it over to Cecilia.
Thank you, Rushton. Well, I think all four of you wonderful team members touched on it in one way or another, that doing good in the world really does more good for you than it does probably for the recipients. But it's been really fun serving with you. I hope we get to do it next year. Our club will be probably hosting haven't talked to the board yet, but but the next of these vocational training team grants. And so looking forward to being in touch with all of you and improving the program and the lives of our teachers next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you, everybody. And guests and members, we will see you next week.